The hungry visitor. It was one of those nights when everything felt heavier than usual. The damp air clung to the skin, and the city's endless hum seemed louder than ever. Alex had just finished his shift at the warehouse, trudging up the dimly lit stairwell of his decrepit apartment building. As he reached the third-floor landing, something caught his eye. A figure crouched in the shadows by the dumpsters, rummaging quietly. "Hey!" Alex called out, more out of curiosity than anger. The figure froze. He saw a glint of purple under the weak fluorescent light. The figure stood slowly, revealing a slender, almost frail form. She turned toward him, and Alex blinked, unsure of what he was seeing. Her skin shimmered in the faint light, a soft lavender that seemed to shift with her every movement. 4 glowing, almond-shaped eyes focused on him, wary and sharp. "What are you doing out here?" Alex asked, stepping closer. The alien girl stayed silent for a moment, then said in halting English, "Looking for food." Her voice was melodic, though clearly strained. "Food from a dumpster?" Alex replied, incredulous. "No money," she said simply. Her gaze darted past him, as if gauging her escape route. "Relax," he said, raising his hands in a calming gesture. "I'm not here to cause trouble. But you're not from around here, are you?" The alien hesitated, then nodded once. "No place to go," she admitted. Alex looked at her more closely. She was dressed in patched, worn clothes that barely covered her thin frame. Her face, though humanoid, was marked with faint bioluminescent patterns that flickered subtly, as if reflecting her emotions. "All right," Alex said, sighing. "I've got some leftovers upstairs. They're not much, but they're better than this." Her eyes narrowed, as if trying to decipher his intentions. Finally, she nodded again. "I will come." "Great," Alex said. "Follow me." They climbed the last flight of stairs in silence. Inside his apartment, Alex gestured toward the rickety kitchen table. "Have a seat. I'll heat something up." She remained by the door, clearly on edge. Alex glanced back at her. "What's your name?" he asked. She hesitated. "Nivola." "All right, Nivola." "I'm Alex," he said, pulling a container of stew from the fridge. "How'd you end up here, anyway?" Nivola didn't answer right away. When she finally spoke, her voice was low. "Ship. Could not stay. No money for dock fees. They left me." "Left you?" Alex asked, frowning. "Your own people just took off without you?" "Yes," she said simply. Her tone was flat, but her glowing eyes seemed to dim slightly. "Well, that's harsh," Alex muttered, setting a bowl in front of her. "Here, eat. It's not much, but it'll fill you up." She approached the table cautiously, then sat down. As she took the first bite, her eyes flicked toward Alex, watching him carefully. "Not bad," she said after a moment, her tone almost surprised. "Thanks," Alex replied. "It's just some stew I threw together. Cheap and easy." He leaned back in his chair. "So, what are you going to do now? I mean, you can't live off dumpster scraps forever." Nivola paused, spoon halfway to her mouth. "I do not know. I thought maybe find work. But no one will hire." She gestured to herself, her strange, otherworldly form making the point clear. "Well, you've got some guts coming here at all," Alex said. "This city's not exactly friendly to strangers, let alone aliens." She tilted her head, her glowing eyes studying him. "You are not like the others," she said softly. "Others?" Alex asked, raising an eyebrow. "Humans," she replied. "Many look at me with fear or anger. You do not." Alex shrugged. "You're just trying to get by, same as everyone else." "I get it." They fell into an uneasy silence. Nivola continued eating, and Alex watched her, wondering what she'd been through before ending up in his stairwell. After a while, she set the empty bowl down. "Thank you," she said quietly. "No problem," Alex replied. "Look, I've got a couch over there if you need a place to crash for the night. It's not much, but it's better than outside." Nivola hesitated again, then gave a small nod. "Thank you, Alex." "Don't mention it," he said, standing up. "I'll grab you a blanket." As he rummaged through a closet, he couldn't shake the feeling that this was the beginning of something he didn't fully understand. But he figured that was a problem for tomorrow. For now, he was just glad he'd been there when she needed someone. Chapter 2. Introducing Nivola. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting faint patterns on the worn carpet of Alex's apartment. He stretched on the couch and glanced toward the corner where Nivola had spent the night. She was already awake, perched on the armrest of his old recliner. Her 4 eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, scanning the room with a mixture of curiosity and caution. "Sleep okay?" Alex asked, rubbing the back of his neck. "I did not sleep," Nivola replied. Her voice was soft but clear. "I do not need it often." Alex gave a tired chuckle. "Must be nice. Humans don't get that luxury." He pushed himself up and made his way to the kitchen. "You eat breakfast?" "Breakfast," she echoed, tilting her head. "Morning meal. You know, food to start the day," Alex explained, pulling out a couple of eggs from the fridge. "Ah," she said. "I do not require food yet. My body can store nutrients for some time." "Well, I need it," Alex said, cracking an egg into the pan. "Hope you don't mind the smell." She watched him intently as he cooked, her lavender skin catching the light. "You prepare your own meals?" "Yeah," Alex said, giving the eggs a quick stir. "Not much choice when you live alone." He glanced back at her. "What about you? Did your people cook like this?" Nivola hesitated. "We do not cook. Our sustenance is grown to be consumed directly. No preparation is necessary." Alex laughed lightly. "Sounds efficient. But I think you're missing out." She tilted her head, her 4 eyes narrowing slightly. "Why do you eat this way? Is it simply tradition?" "Partly," Alex said. "But it's also about enjoying the process, you know? Mixing ingredients, trying new flavors. It makes a simple meal feel, I don't know, satisfying." Nivola seemed to consider this. "Interesting. My people do not pursue enjoyment in such activities." "Well, maybe it's something you can try while you're here," Alex said, sliding the eggs onto a plate. "Want to give it a shot?" "Give what a shot?" she asked, her tone cautious. "Cooking," Alex said, grinning. "I'll teach you how to make something. Could be fun." She hesitated, her glowing eyes flicking toward the stove. "I do not know if I can." "Sure you can," Alex said, pulling another egg from the fridge. "Just crack it open and pour it in the pan." Nivola stood slowly, her movements deliberate, and approached the stove. She picked up the egg with long, delicate fingers. "Like this?" "Yeah, now just crack it on the edge," Alex said, demonstrating the motion. Nivola mimicked him, though she pressed too hard and the egg crumbled in her hands. She frowned, glancing at the gooey mess dripping onto the counter. "Hey, not bad for your first try," Alex said, laughing. He handed her another egg. "Try again, but a little gentler." She narrowed her eyes slightly but tried again, this time successfully cracking the shell and pouring the contents into the pan. "There you go," Alex said, giving her a nod of approval. "Now, stir it around a bit so it doesn't burn." Nivola picked up the spatula awkwardly, clearly unfamiliar with human utensils. She slowly moved the egg around, her expression a mix of concentration and uncertainty. "It is strange," she said after a moment, "but not unpleasant." Alex smirked. "See, you're a natural. Maybe I should put you in charge of breakfast from now on." She looked at him, the corners of her mouth curving upward slightly. "I would not mind learning more." "Sure," Alex said, leaning against the counter. "I'll teach you whatever I know. Who knows, maybe we'll end up making something halfway decent." They shared a brief, comfortable silence as Nivola continued to stir the egg. After a moment she said, "Alex, why do you help me?" He paused, caught off guard by the question. "Why not?" he said after a moment. "You needed a meal, a place to stay. Didn't seem right to just walk away." Her glowing eyes met his. "Most would have." Alex shrugged. "Well, I'm not most people." "I see," Nivola said softly. She turned back to the pan, focusing on her task. As the egg finished cooking, she carefully transferred it onto a plate. Alex handed her a fork and watched as she hesitantly took a bite. Her expression shifted. If he didn't know better, he'd say she was surprised. "This is good," she said, her voice quiet. "Glad you like it," Alex said with a grin. "See, cooking's not so bad." She looked at him again, her eyes glinting faintly in the light. "Thank you, Alex." "Don't mention it," he replied, leaning back against the counter. For the first time since meeting her, Alex saw Nivola relax, if only a little. In that small moment, the room seemed a little warmer, and the weight of the city outside felt a little less pressing. Chapter 3. Building Bridges. The city felt quieter in the early afternoon, though it was never truly silent. Alex and Nivola stood at the edge of the neighborhood park, a scrappy green space tucked between old apartment blocks and a long row of shuttered storefronts. For once, Nivola wasn't looking over her shoulder or shifting nervously. She was too busy watching the children playing near the swings, their laughter filling the air. "They are lively," she said, tilting her head as her 4 eyes tracked the children's movements. "Yeah," Alex replied, sipping a coffee from a paper cup. "Kids around here don't have much, but they make the most of it." Nivola glanced at him. "And you? Were you lively as a child?" He chuckled. "Not really. I was more of the quiet type. Spent most of my time drawing or building stuff out of junk." "Building?" she asked, her interest clearly piqued. "Yeah," Alex said. "Toy robots, models, that sort of thing. I guess I liked working with my hands." "I understand that," Nivola said. "In my home, many took pride in creating structures, art, machines. It is satisfying to see something take shape because of your effort." Alex nodded. "I didn't think I'd hear an alien say something so normal." She tilted her head. "You think of me as not normal? Well, you've got 4 glowing eyes, lavender skin, and you can go days without eating or sleeping," Alex said with a small smile. "But, sure, I guess you're not that different after all." Nivola's eyes glinted faintly, almost as if she were amused. "It is not our appearance that makes us different," she said. "It is our choices. What we value, what we leave behind. That is what truly matters." "That's pretty deep," Alex said, feeling a bit caught off guard by her insight. "You do not agree?" she asked. "No, I think you're right," he said. "I guess I just never thought about it like that." As they walked, Nivola gestured toward a run-down building on the corner. "What is that place?" Alex glanced at it. "That used to be a community center. It's been closed for years. Funding dried up, people moved out, and now it's just sitting there, gathering dust. Could it not be reopened? She asked. Maybe, Alex said. But it would take money and people who care enough to fix it up. And around here, that's in short supply. Nivola looked thoughtful. In my home, we would gather as a collective to restore what was broken. Each would contribute what they could. Materials, time, knowledge. It was expected. Sounds nice, Alex said. But people here don't always work that way. They've got their own problems to deal with. She studied him. And you? Would you help? Alex shrugged. I guess so. If I knew how to fix it, sure. It'd be nice to see this place come alive again. But it's not just about effort. You need the right tools, the right people. Perhaps, Nivola said slowly. But sometimes one person can start something. Others see the effort and follow. Alex glanced at her. You really think it's that simple? No, she admitted. But it is not always as complicated as you believe. They fell into a comfortable silence, watching the wind rustle through the leaves. After a while, Alex spoke up. You know, you're not what I expected. She turned her head, her glowing eyes meeting his. What did you expect? I don't know, he said. Something more. I don't know, alien? Cold? Instead, you're just Nivola. She considered his words, then nodded once. And you are just Alex. They both laughed softly, the tension between them easing. It felt, for a moment, like they weren't so different after all. Chapter 4. A dangerous encounter. The sun was just dipping below the horizon when Alex and Nivola rounded the corner onto their street. The neighborhood was quiet enough during the day, but at night it took on a different atmosphere. A couple of streetlights flickered weakly, their glow barely cutting through the encroaching darkness. So, what did you think of the market? Alex asked, adjusting the bag of groceries he carried. It was vibrant, Nivola replied, her tone thoughtful. Many colors, many sounds. The people seemed to enjoy bartering. Yeah, it's one of the few places around here that still feels alive, Alex said. I'm glad you got to see it. As they approached Alex's apartment building, Nivola suddenly stopped. Her 4 eyes darted toward the alley across the street. Someone is watching us. Alex followed her gaze, but saw nothing. Are you sure? I don't see anyone. I can feel it, she said quietly. A presence. He frowned and stepped in front of her slightly. Stay close. Let's get inside. They quickened their pace, but as they reached the front steps, 3 men emerged from the alley. The leader, a stocky guy with a shaved head, smirked at them. Hey there, pal, the leader said, his voice dripping with false friendliness. Interesting friend you've got. Must be from out of town, huh? Alex set the grocery bag down and stood tall. What do you want? Oh, nothing much, the man said, his grin widening. We've just been hearing some talk about a new arrival. Thought we'd welcome her to the neighborhood. Nivola stepped closer to Alex. Alex. Don't worry, he said under his breath. Just stay calm. The man took a step forward, his 2 friends flanking him. Look, we're reasonable guys. You hand her over, and we'll forget we ever saw you. Alex clenched his fists. Hand her over? What the hell are you talking about? Come on, the man said. We know what she is. That kind of tech she's got. Let's just say it's worth a lot to the right people. Tech? Alex asked, glancing at Nivola. She shook her head slightly, her glowing eyes narrowing. They mean the bracelet. Alex remembered the intricately crafted bracelet Nivola had worn since the day they met. She had never explained much about it, but it was clear now that it was valuable enough for these thugs to come looking for it. "Sorry, guys," Alex said, his voice steady. "She's not going anywhere." The leader's smirk vanished. "Is that so?" Before Alex could react, one of the men lunged. Alex ducked, narrowly avoiding the punch, and pushed Nivola back toward the door. "Get inside," he shouted. Nivola hesitated, her eyes darting between Alex and their attackers. "Now," he said, shoving the door open. As she slipped inside, Alex turned back to face the three men. The leader's expression was cold now, his hands clenching into fists. "Big mistake," the man said. Alex barely had time to block the next swing, his arm catching the thug's punch. The force sent him stumbling back, but he kept his balance. "Not so tough now, are you?" the leader taunted. From the corner of his eye, Alex saw Nivola reappear in the doorway. She was holding something, a small, spherical device that hummed softly. "Nivola, no!" Alex shouted. "Don't!" She threw the device, and it hit the ground between the men. A burst of light and sound erupted, causing the thugs to stagger and clutch their ears. Alex took the opportunity to grab Nivola's hand and pull her away from the door. "Come on," he said, dragging her down the hallway. They ran up the stairs, Alex's heart pounding as the sound of confused shouts faded behind them. When they reached his apartment, he slammed the door shut and bolted it. "What was that?" Alex asked, his voice hoarse. "A defensive emitter," Nivola said, her breathing uneven. "It emits a burst that disorients attackers. I had it in case of emergencies." "Well, I'd call that an emergency," Alex said, leaning against the door. "But now they know where we live." Nivola looked at him, her expression unreadable. "I am sorry. I did not mean to bring this trouble to you." Alex shook his head. "It's not your fault. Those guys were looking for someone to bully. But we can't stay here. If they come back with more people—" "What can we do?" she asked. He thought for a moment, then said, "I know a place we can lay low. A friend of mine owns a repair shop across town. He's got a basement we can use until we figure this out." Nivola hesitated, then nodded. "I will follow your lead." Alex grabbed a backpack and began stuffing it with essentials. "We'll leave as soon as it's dark enough. Until then, we stay quiet." As they prepared to leave, Alex glanced at Nivola. Despite the danger, she stood tall, her glowing eyes scanning the room for anything they might need. "You all right?" Alex asked. She nodded. "I have faced worse. As long as we work together, we can overcome this." Alex smiled faintly. "Good. Then let's get ready. We'll get through this, one step at a time." Chapter 5. Cross-Cultural Understanding. The basement of Alex's friend's repair shop wasn't much to look at, just a few stacks of spare parts, an old workbench, and a pair of creaky chairs. But it was quiet, and it gave them the chance to regroup after the encounter with the gang. Alex set down his backpack and nodded toward the chairs. "Not exactly luxury living, but it'll do for now. Grab a seat." Nivola glanced around, her 4 eyes scanning the cluttered space. "This place has an interesting smell." He chuckled. "Yeah, it's the grease and oil. My buddy works on old engines up there. You get used to it." She tilted her head, her glowing eyes narrowing slightly. "It is not unpleasant. Just different." Alex took a seat and leaned back, his hands behind his head. "So, we'll lay low here until we figure out our next move. In the meantime, maybe we can try to understand each other a little better. I mean, we've been through a lot already, and I barely know anything about you." Nivola hesitated, then sat down across from him. "What would you like to know?" "Everything," Alex said with a small grin. "What's your homeworld like? Your people?" She looked thoughtful for a moment. "My home is called Keval. It is a place of many contrasts, vast forests, sprawling cities, oceans that glow at night. Our people value balance and harmony. We try not to take more than we need, and we celebrate the cycles of nature and technology." "Sounds beautiful," Alex said. "So why'd you leave?" Nivola's gaze shifted away. "I did not fit. My views, my choices, they went against what was expected of me. I wanted something different, and that desire was unwelcome." Alex nodded slowly. "I get that. Not everyone fits into the mold. I've had my share of disagreements with people back home too. It's not easy, but you gotta do what feels right." Her eyes met his, glowing faintly in the dim light. "You understand." "Sure," Alex said. "Maybe humans and whatever you are aren't so different after all." She tilted her head. "And you? What about your home? Your people?" Alex laughed. "Not much to tell. Grew up a few hours from here in a little nowhere town. Spent my days fixing up old junk, trying to figure out what I wanted. Eventually moved to the city, hoping for something better. Instead, I ended up working a dead-end job, barely scraping by. Not exactly a fairy tale." "But you still help others," Nivola said, her voice quiet. Alex shrugged. "Guess I just figure, if I was in their shoes, I'd hope someone would help me too. Doesn't always work out that way, though." She studied him for a long moment, then said, "You are kind. That is rare." Alex felt a slight flush rise to his cheeks. "I'm just doing what I can. You would have done the same if the roles were reversed, right?" "I would," she said. "But I did not expect that of you. Your kind are known for ambition, often at the cost of others." "That's fair," Alex admitted. "Humans can be pretty selfish. But we're not all bad. Sometimes we just need a reason to do the right thing." Nivola seemed to consider this. "Perhaps we are more alike than I thought." "Maybe," Alex said with a small smile. "You know, you're not what I expected, either. I thought aliens would be, I don't know, cold, logical. Instead, you're just you." She gave a faint smile of her own. "And you are just Alex." They both laughed softly. For a moment, the tension from the past few days seemed to melt away. "So," Alex said, leaning forward, "now that we're stuck here for a bit, how about you show me some of that technology you've got? I saw that bracelet of yours do some pretty wild stuff back there." Nivola nodded. "Very well. I will show you." She removed the bracelet and held it up. Its surface shimmered as if it were alive, shifting colors like a liquid crystal. She pressed a small indentation, and a soft hum filled the air. A series of holographic symbols appeared above it, swirling in a slow, mesmerizing pattern. "This is a multi-function interface," she explained. "It can translate languages, project information, and connect to certain networks. It also contains limited defensive capabilities, as you saw earlier." Alex leaned closer, fascinated. "How's it work?" Nivola smiled faintly. "Much of it relies on bioreactive materials, elements that respond to my unique biology. It is difficult to explain in human terms." "Well, it's still incredible," Alex said. "And here I thought my smartphone was high-tech." She tilted her head. "You find this impressive, but it is quite common among my people. Yeah, well, on Earth, we're still playing catch-up, Alex said with a grin. I mean, we've got some cool stuff, but nothing like this. Nivola glanced at the bracelet, then at Alex. Perhaps I could teach you some of the basic functions. It would be a good way to pass the time. I'd like that, Alex said. Show me what you've got. As Nivola began walking him through the device's interface, Alex couldn't help but feel a growing sense of connection. They came from different worlds, but in that small, cluttered basement, they were just two people figuring things out together. Chapter 6. Hearts in Harmony. The days passed in a quiet rhythm at the repair shop's basement. Alex and Nivola settled into a kind of routine. She taught him more about her technology, and he showed her how humans got by with simpler tools and ingenuity. Their conversations grew longer, their silences more comfortable, and they found themselves enjoying each other's company more than either had expected. One evening, as they worked on repairing an old portable generator, Alex caught Nivola studying him closely. He looked up from the wiring harness in his hands and raised an eyebrow. "Something on my face?" She shook her head, a slight glimmer in her luminous eyes. "No, I was only thinking about how adaptable you are." "Adaptable?" Alex said, smirking. "That's a fancy way of saying I've been winging it." "I mean it as a compliment," she replied. "You learn quickly. You find ways to solve problems without advanced resources. It is impressive." "Well, when you grow up fixing old cars and patched-up appliances, you get used to making do," Alex said, shrugging. "But I've got a lot to learn from you, too. That bracelet of yours still blows my mind." Nivola held up the device, which shimmered faintly in her hand. "It is just a tool. What truly matters is the knowledge behind it, the willingness to share and teach. And you're good at that," Alex said. He gave her a small smile. "I never thought I'd be learning alien tech from someone who used to be stranded outside my apartment building." She tilted her head, her eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. "And I never thought I would find someone who made me feel welcome." The warmth in her voice caught Alex off guard. He set the wiring harness down and leaned back against the workbench, studying her. "You've been through a lot, haven't you?" "We both have," Nivola said softly. "But it is different now." "How so?" he asked, his tone gentle. "Because now we face it together," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Their eyes met, and for a moment the air between them seemed to shift. Alex wasn't sure if it was the dim lighting or the way her gaze softened, but something felt different. "Nivola," he began, then hesitated. "Yes," she prompted, her tone curious. "Why did you really stay?" he asked. "After that first meal, you could have gone off on your own, found another way. But you stayed with me." She paused, as if searching for the right words. "At first, it was because I had no other choice. But then I saw something in you, kindness, patience. I stayed because I felt safe." Alex felt a lump in his throat. He hadn't expected her to be so candid, and it left him unsure how to respond. "I'm glad you did," he said finally. "I don't think I'd have gotten through all this without you." "Nor I without you," she replied, her voice steady. They stood there in the soft glow of a single overhead light, the hum of the generator all but forgotten. Slowly, Alex reached out a hand. Nivola hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Her touch was cool, her fingers slender and smooth, but it felt natural, comfortable. Alex squeezed gently, and she responded in kind. "I didn't think I'd ever meet someone like you," he said. Nivola stepped closer, her glowing eyes searching his face. "And I did not think I would find someone who would accept me." He smiled faintly. "Well, Guess we're both full of surprises." For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, though. It was the kind of quiet that spoke volumes, an understanding, a connection that needed no words. Then, slowly, Alex leaned forward, his hand still holding hers. He paused when he was close enough to see the faint patterns glowing on her skin. "Is this okay?" he asked softly. Nivola's eyes brightened slightly. "Yes," she whispered. Their lips met gently, hesitantly at first, as if testing the waters. Nivola's touch was light, almost tentative, but as the moment stretched on, she leaned in closer, her other hand resting against Alex's arm. Alex felt a warmth spread through him, a mix of relief and excitement. He deepened the kiss just slightly, careful not to rush, and Nivola responded by tilting her head, her 4 glowing eyes closing in unison. When they finally broke apart, Alex met her gaze and couldn't help but smile. "I guess we're figuring this out, huh?" Nivola nodded, her expression serene. "Yes, we are." They stayed like that for a while longer, hands still intertwined, as the quiet hum of the generator filled the room. In that moment, the challenges of the past and the uncertainties of the future faded away. It was just the two of them, learning how to navigate this new connection, one careful step at a time. Chapter 7. A New Beginning. The days spent in the repair shop's basement had started to blur together, but something about this morning felt different. Alex woke up before Nivola, which was unusual. He glanced at her, still seated in the corner of the room, her eyes faintly glowing even as she rested. She had explained once that sleep for her was more like a meditative state, rare, brief, and not always necessary. Yet, there she was, serene and quiet, her hands folded in her lap. He stood up carefully, not wanting to disturb her. The workshop above them was silent. His friend only came by during certain hours to keep the shop running. They had the place to themselves most of the time, which gave them the chance to talk, plan, and slowly piece together what would come next. Alex wandered over to the small table where their few supplies were gathered. He busied himself making coffee, a small comfort in all the uncertainty. The smell of the brewing coffee must have stirred Nivola, because soon her eyes opened fully, their glow more vibrant than before. "You are up early," she said softly. "Couldn't sleep," Alex replied. "Guess I've been thinking too much." She tilted her head slightly. "About what?" "About what happens next," he admitted. "We can't stay here forever, and those guys from before. They're still out there. Even if they haven't come looking for us yet, it's only a matter of time." Nivola nodded. "You are right. We must find a more permanent solution." Alex brought a steaming cup of coffee over to her. "I know you don't drink this stuff, but holding it might warm your hands." She took the cup, glancing at it curiously. "I appreciate the gesture." He sat down across from her, his own cup cradled in his hands. "I've been thinking. What if we reach out to someone who can help? You mentioned before that the bracelet can send out signals. Could it be used to contact your people?" Nivola's gaze shifted to the bracelet on her wrist. "It could. But it would be a risk. The signal would not go unnoticed by others, including those who might wish to harm me, or us." Alex frowned. "What about the right people? Someone you trust?" She hesitated. "There are those I trust, but they are far away. If they received the signal, it would take time for them to arrive, and during that time, we would need to remain hidden." "Maybe that's our best bet," Alex said. "We stay low, wait for help to come. Once they do, you can figure out your next move." She studied him for a moment. "And you? What would you do if I left?" Alex shrugged. "I'd keep going. That's what I've always done. But I'd miss having you around." Her eyes softened. "I would miss you as well." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of their decisions settling in the room. Alex sipped his coffee and glanced at the faint light filtering through the small basement window. It wasn't much, but it reminded him that the world was still out there, waiting for them to face it. "I'll help you send the signal," he said finally. "We'll figure out the rest as we go." Nivola gave a small nod. "Very well. I will need to calibrate the bracelet to ensure the message reaches the correct destination. I'm no tech genius, but I'll help however I can," Alex said. "You just tell me what to do." She smiled faintly. "You have already done much more than I could have asked." "Thank you, Alex." He shook his head. "No need to thank me. We're in this together." With that, Nivola began working on her bracelet, adjusting the interface with careful precision. Alex stayed nearby, handing her tools and offering suggestions when she asked. It felt good to be doing something concrete, to have a plan, however uncertain it might be. Hours passed as they prepared the signal. Nivola explained how the bracelet's technology worked in more detail than ever before, and Alex listened intently, amazed at the complexity of her world. By the time they were ready, the room was filled with a quiet anticipation. "Are you sure about this?" Alex asked. Nivola met his gaze, her glowing eyes steady. "I am. If I do not try, I will never know if help can reach me." "All right," Alex said. "Let's do it." She pressed a sequence of symbols on the bracelet, and a faint hum filled the room. A soft blue light radiated from the device as the signal was sent. For a moment, it felt as though the entire basement held its breath. "It is done," Nivola said, her voice calm. "Now we wait." Alex leaned back in his chair, letting out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Guess we're in for some more quiet nights down here." Nivola smiled faintly. "I do not mind the quiet. It has given me time to learn, about your world, and about you." Alex looked at her, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the coffee in his hand. "You know, I think I've learned more from you than I ever thought I would. Funny how things work out." She tilted her head. "It is strange, isn't it? How two beings from different worlds can find common ground." "Yeah," Alex said, his voice soft. "Strange, but kind of amazing." They stayed there, sitting side by side in the dim basement light, waiting for whatever would come next. Though the future was uncertain, one thing was clear: they would face it together. Chapter 8. The Farewell That Changed Everything. Nivola's bracelet blinked faintly, signaling that her message had been received. She turned her gaze toward Alex, who was leaning against the workbench, arms crossed, watching her closely. "So, they got it?" Alex asked. "Yes," she replied. "They have confirmed. They are coming." "When?" She paused. "It could take a few days. Perhaps more. The distance is great." Alex nodded, his expression unreadable. "That's good, though. At least we know help's on the way." Nivola studied him, her glowing eyes soft. "You do not look pleased." "It's not that," Alex said. "It's finally happening, you know? You'll be going back to where you belong. That's a good thing." She tilted her head. "I will miss this place." "This place," Alex said with a small laugh. "You've been hiding in a basement, eating canned soup and dealing with my bad jokes. What's to miss?" "You," she said simply. He blinked, caught off guard. "Me?" "You have given me more than just food and shelter," Nivola said, her voice steady. "You gave me kindness when I was alone. You taught me to understand your world. And you showed me that I was not as lost as I believed." Alex looked away, scratching the back of his neck. "You're giving me too much credit." "No," she said firmly. "You do not see yourself as I do. You are brave, compassionate, and clever. I would not have made it this far without you." "Stop," he said, his tone lighter, trying to hide the lump in his throat. "You'll make me blush." She stepped closer, placing a hand on his arm. Her touch was gentle, and Alex turned his head to meet her gaze. "I mean it," she said softly. "You have become very important to me." He searched her face, his defenses slipping. "You're important to me too," he admitted. Her lips curved into a faint smile. "Then come with me." Alex's eyes widened. "What?" "Come with me," Nivola said again, her voice steady. "When my people arrive, join us. See my world. Live among us. There is a place for you there, Alex. I know it." He opened his mouth to respond, but found himself at a loss. The idea was staggering. Leaving Earth. Starting over somewhere completely alien. Literally? "Nivola, that's—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "That's a lot to ask." "I understand," she said. "It is not a decision to make lightly. But you have no reason to stay here. You told me yourself. This life is not the one you wanted. With us, you could have a new beginning." He frowned, staring at the ground. "I don't know. It's not that simple. What if I can't fit in there? What if I make things harder for you?" She reached out, her hand cupping his cheek, and he looked up at her in surprise. "I believe in you," Nivola said. "And if you choose to come, I will help you, just as you helped me." Her words cut through his doubts like a blade. He could see the sincerity in her eyes, feel it in her touch. "I'll think about it," Alex said finally, his voice quiet. "But no promises." "That is all I ask," she replied, stepping back. They spent the next few days preparing, though neither spoke much about the decision hanging over Alex's head. Instead, they focused on practical matters, gathering what few belongings she had, ensuring the signal was still active, and making sure the bracelet's functions were fully operational. Alex found himself watching her more closely than before, as if memorizing every detail. One evening, as they sat together at the workbench, Nivola turned to him and said, "If you choose not to come, I will understand." "I know," Alex said. "But I need to be sure. I can't just leave without thinking it through." "Take all the time you need," she said. "But remember, this opportunity may never come again." "I know," he said. The day finally arrived when the faint hum of a ship could be heard overhead. Nivola's people had come. They stood together outside the shop, the sleek, silvery vessel descending like a mirage from the clouds. Alex felt a strange mix of relief and dread. This was it, the moment he had been both hoping for and dreading. A ramp extended from the ship, and two figures emerged, tall, graceful, and unmistakably alien. Nivola stepped forward, speaking quickly in her native tongue. The newcomers listened, their glowing eyes moving between her and Alex. Nivola turned back to him. "They will not wait long." Alex stared at the ship, then at her. His chest tightened. He stopped, the words catching in his throat. "You do not have to decide now," Nivola said gently. "But if you wish to come, step forward." He took a deep breath, his mind racing. Finally, he stepped closer to her, their hands brushing. "I don't know what I'm doing," Alex said. "Neither do I," she admitted. "Then I guess we'll figure it out together," he said, squeezing her hand. Her eyes brightened, and a small smile crossed her lips. Without another word, they walked up the ramp together. The ship's interior was unlike anything Alex had ever seen. Smooth surfaces, glowing panels, and a soft, pulsating light that seemed alive. As the ramp closed behind them and the ship began to lift off, Alex turned to Nivola. "What happens now?" he asked. She looked at him, her expression calm yet filled with a quiet determination. "Now we begin a new journey," she said. "Together."